Morning, Kate here bringing you this week's Monday Mission. And this one is all about how to disagree with other people and possibly even how to argue with them when there's a difference of opinion or a disagreement and how to do that productively. Okay, so as usual, we'll start with talking about the brain and why we may act the way that we do when someone has a different opinion or someone disagrees with us. And then we're going to talk about how we can be productive when that comes up for us. Okay, so I think it's really important to go back and revisit our process that we've sort of been talking about here and understanding that when someone disagrees with us or has a different opinion or we get into an argument with someone over a situation, that's neutral. Okay, that's not upsetting until we have thoughts about it that make it upsetting. Okay, so let's say somebody has a different opinion than you, neutral, right? It just is what it is. But then we start to have thoughts about it, and those thoughts create feelings. Maybe anger, frustration, resentment, you know, insert feeling here, right? But it's not until we start to have those thoughts about it that those feelings come up. Okay, so it's just something to, I think, revisit as we go forward and talk about what happens when we disagree and someone has a different opinion of us. So understanding that it actually is a neutral kind of situation. It just is what it is until we have thoughts about it, right? So it's usually about what we make that mean, right? It's usually the thoughts about the disagreement that cause the difficulty, right? So let's say that we have a difference of opinion from our spouse, and we make that mean that we're not compatible and our relationship's doomed. We're never going to get through this, right? Or we have a disagreement with a family member, and we make that mean that they can't be in our lives anymore. We're never going to be able to be in the same room together. It comes back to what we're making that neutral situation mean and what our thoughts are about it. Okay, so just keep that in mind as we go along and we keep talking, because what happens when someone disagrees, has a different opinion, starts to argue with us, our brainimal, right, the animal part of our brain starts to act up, because when someone has a different opinion than you, a lot of times we can make that mean that, oh God, maybe we're wrong. And that means that we're a bad person or we don't know as much as we should or whatever it might be. So we get defensive and our brainimal starts to act up and wants to fight to the death for that belief, right? And wants to hold on to it. So we think that what we believe is there because we are right, okay? But our belief is actually the result of all of our messaging. So, how we were raised, messages we received from school and family and people that we work with, and just society in general. So, that's where our belief comes from, right? It's not necessarily a belief because we're absolutely right, okay? So when that is challenged, and that's, our identity is being challenged when someone disagrees with it, that can feel really unnerving, which is why we sort of have that, urge to fight back, right? And defend that opinion or that, a point of view that we have. So it's important to understand that, because if we understand about yourself, then you can understand that the same is true for the other person, right? So they are also coming to this argument or this disagreement with their messaging and how they interpreted the messages they received. And so that's a lot of times what's underneath the opinion. And then when the opinion disagrees with you or is different than yours, and you're kind of letting them know that you don't agree, their brainimal starts to act up, right? So their animal part of the brain is acting up and getting defensive and holding on to that truth for them, right? That belief. And then now we're both just arguing with the animal parts of our brains. Not usually productive, right? So I think it's important to understand why it happens, okay? And especially if you are someone that has been a people pleaser and really hates conflict and avoids conflict, anytime there is a little bit of conflict, you can kind of make that mean, catastrophe, right? And really get into that animal part of the brain where you feel like you have to defend and hold on to it. Or maybe how your brain animal is reacting is to shut down, walk away, not even talk about it, not deal with it. Right, so it's just really important to realize why and how that shows up for you, and to understand that it's showing up for them too. That's what's happening in their brain too. Okay, so a couple examples. Let's say the most recent argument was the boys, we had a difference of opinion as to where their goggles were and whether or not we had a pair of their friends' goggles in our swim bag. Okay. And one was saying that we did have it, one was saying that we didn't. And they're immediately going back and forth, raising voices, defending their belief that the goggles are either there or not there, when all we had to do was go look in the bag, right? Pretty easy solution. But that's what was happening, right? Their, belief was being challenged. And so they reacted with that animal part of the brain. Okay. So that's, a simple example. But another example could be, let's say that you say to your mom, okay, that she helps out with your siblings more than you. Okay. And she feels very challenged by this. She disagrees with you. She absolutely doesn't think that that's true or that she does that. The sibling doesn't think that she does that, right? And so they're challenging you with this, and it can become a pretty full blown argument, right? Where emotions are running high and lots of difference of opinions and accusations, when really we wanted to just maybe have a conversation and just say, hey, I feel this way. I feel like this is happening. Can we just have a conversation about it? And when you under or look under all of that, you may realize that the mom maybe just doesn't think that you need as much help as the sibling does for whatever reason. Or you have a spouse that's maybe more helpful than their spouse. So they think that, there's kind of two to help out, whereas your sibling only has themselves, whatever it might be. It's just understanding that typically you don't always know what's underneath, right? Where they all don't always understand what's underneath for you, okay? So that's where we want to start having the productive conversations, okay? And that's what we can do with our next step here. So the first one is to avoid accusing the other person, right? You always help so and so. You never help me, especially using those all or nothing statements. Never, always, okay? Those kinds of statements are going to make the person feel very defensive, and they are not going to be able to hear what you're actually saying because they're in the animal part of the brain. They're not going to be in the thinking part where they can really rationalize and problem solve with you. Okay, so really avoid accusations. You want the goal of your conversation to be to better understand the other person. Okay, the goal of the conversation cannot be to convince them that you are right and they are wrong. Okay, if that is your goal, then you will counteract absolutely everything that they say rather than really truly trying to understand what it is, how they came to this opinion, how they came to this belief, what their messaging has been, right? You may still end that conversation disagreeing, but now you have a better idea of why they have the opinion that they do or why they came to the table with the argument that they showed up with, okay? But if your true goal is to just make sure that they understand that you're right and they're wrong, first of all, you're probably never going to get that goal. And second of all, you're not going to be able to come to that argument from a place of curiosity. It's going to come from judgment and accusation. Okay. So you want to be curious and make sure that that's your goal. You want to actively listen. Okay. So a lot of times we listen um, in order to respond, right? Meaning, so I'm listening to you, but I've already kind of decided what I'm going to say next, right? And I'm going to respond in that way as soon as you stop talking or I find an opening. If I'm actively listening, I am truly present in the moment and hearing what you're saying. I may be even repeating back to you what you said to make sure that I understood what you were trying to get across, right? That would be actively listening rather than listening in order to respond or find your in so you can get that dig or you can get that next point across that you want to in your conversation. Okay. Understand how your brain works and how their brain works, even if they don't. Okay. They may not understand that they're showing up with their brain wall. They may not understand why they're being defensive, right? But if you understand it and you understand that that's how your brain works and that's how their brain works, then you can sort of hold that space for them and guide the conversation to a more neutral place of a goal of just really understanding each other, right? So asking yourself in that moment, do I just want to be right? Am I just trying to make sure that I'm right and defending this belief to the end of this conversation, right? You can ask yourself that for a check-in. Be careful of what you're making their opinion mean. So, really asking yourself those hard questions. If they disagree with me, what does that mean to me, right? Because if you realize that people can disagree and still love each other and still have respect for each other, then a disagreement really isn't that detrimental, right? It just is what it is. We're disagreeing. But if you come to it thinking that that disagreement means, these kind of big ticket things, like your relationship isn't, you're not in a good place with your relationship. You can't be around each other anymore. You can't be around this family member. It means that you're wrong and you're a horrible person, or it means they're wrong and they're a horrible person. If you make these disagreements and these arguments mean these big things, it's really going to be difficult to get to the true, issue that is underlying it all. Make sure you're avoiding uh, broad generalizations and insulting, right? And maybe slighting the other person. Maybe you're bringing up something from the past to this conversation, which really isn't relevant, right? Or you're just constantly trying to point out um, things that have happened in the past that prove your point or prove your argument. Again, if you're doing that, you're automatically just going to make their defenses go up, and it is not going to be a productive conversation, right? Because then they're going to start back accusing you and pointing out things from the past with you. And again, you're not getting to that goal of just truly trying to understand each other. And then you want to be able to accept that it is perfectly okay to have different opinions. Okay? We have different opinions. It's neutral. It's okay. It does not have to mean all of these things that cause these feelings. Okay? It just is what it is. We have a difference of opinion. Okay? And sometimes you may have to just agree to disagree. Sometimes you may have a great conversation with that person, and you at least come to the point where you understand why they have the opinion that they did or do. Okay? Or why they came to the argument that they did. So that's your mission, should you choose to accept it. The next time that you are finding yourself arguing with someone or disagreeing is to really come from a place of understanding what's going on for them, understanding how your brain works, not making it mean these big things, right? Making sure it's just a neutral thing that is going on and that we can work through, right? So those are the points of the mission for this week. So as always, share with me anything that comes up with you. This is really difficult, really, really difficult to wrap your brain around. So it's not going to be perfect the first time, fifth time, 100th time, right? And you may have to come back and remind yourself of these things. But let me know how this lands for you, as far as if you think this is something that would work for you and that you're willing to try, because I know it's just a really difficult thing to do. All right. So as always, share with me. I hope to hear from you soon, and have a great day. Bye.